I grew up in the rural South, next door to my grandparents. We lived in a deeply wooded area right off the highway, on a large plot of land my grandparents owned. When this story took place, only my grandmother was alive at the time. While not huge, our woods were large enough to act as a home for deer, rabbits, foxes, and the like. Just to give you a sense of how in the boonies this was, at the edge of our land was a family-owned dairy farm and fields along the highway. Google Maps still can't locate my childhood address. Near the end of 8th grade, our class went on a day-to-day field trip, and parents were to pick us up at 10 p.m. Now, this being before the cell phone boom, I was pretty embarrassed and upset when no one came to get me from school. We tried calling my house phone, but no luck. About an hour late, my dad finally came to get me in his pickup, calm but visibly rattled. As it turned out, as my dad was leaving to get me on time, 4 strange men were lurking through our large wooded yard. My burly redneck of a dad chased them through the woods until they disappeared into the field, and our tiny pug gave chase right along with him. The police were called, but there wasn't much they could do aside from filing a report. While scary, I was kind of an oblivious child, and with the police having been called, I figured it was over with. Addicts would sometimes steal lawnmowers and weed eaters. It was just something that happened. Looking back, the things that happened over the following months make my skin crawl. I began to notice strange cars parked off the highway near our home in the middle of the night. Given that our house was tucked back into the woods, it was easy for them to keep the license plate turned away from the view of our windows. The cars were always just sitting, no one getting out or in, and it didn't look like the cars had suffered from a breakdown. We called the police when we noticed these strange cars, but the distance to our home made it so that they had always driven off by the time anyone reached us. I didn't understand this at the time, but we were clearly being watched. Even as an adult, I don't understand what these people wanted. We lived in a little trailer that didn't exactly scream, "Hey, we got drug money over here." And there were equally isolated, yet affluent neighborhoods that were easily accessible. My parents worked full-time during the day, and my sister and I were both teenagers in school. So why not break in during the day? As I said, our home was wooded, shielded off a dirt road from the highway we lived on, so no one would have even noticed. I was in bed when the men came back. It seemed the strange car visits had lessened, but my father went out late one evening to get CDs from his pickup, and they were out there, again. My mother made us stay inside when she called the police, but I remember the sound of my father screaming as he thundered after them. Just like last time, they disappeared into the woods. The police couldn't find them. They agreed that they were stalking us out. We were poor, so there was no money for security equipment. My mother had never allowed guns in the house until this point, but my grandfather's old rifles were now being kept in their closet. While we lived in our trailer, our grandmother lived beside us in a little brick house she built with my grandfather in the 70s. It had an old-fashioned carport with steps that led to her front door, clunky with frosted glass shutters from top to bottom. It made a distinct, heavy sound of shaking glass when it was knocked on. Usually, a family member would sleep over with her in case she needed something, but she had been feeling well that day and didn't need help. She always stayed up late watching television and liked to sleep during the day when it was sunny and warm. A man came to her door, sometime past 3 in the morning. She called out to ask who it was, thinking it might be one of us, but there was no answer. He continued to knock while my grandmother told him to go away and to leave her alone. Instead, he opened her door. It was old and fairly easy to unlock, but her chain lock kept him from getting in. So he spoke directly to her through the crack. He would only tell her, "Come on, let me in. Let me in. I know you're alone." I have no idea how she kept her calm through this, or how she had the nerve to lie on her couch and get equally irate with the strange man at her door in the night. She couldn't walk well and her phone was in the kitchen. After 15 minutes of this exchange, the stranger calmly closed the door and went away. My grandmother called our home first because he could be coming to us next, and then she called the police. I was sitting in my grandfather's recliner, listening as she told the officers what had happened. She was calm then too, with her jaw stuck out in anger. Obviously, nothing ever came of it. We never found out who was watching us or why. The man never came back. The strangers in their unfamiliar cars stopped coming. We never saw anyone outside again. So this happened back in 6th grade, and I think it's the closest I've ever come to dying. At the school I went to, we always used to have some big end of the year field trip. That year, we were going to New York, and me and a couple of friends planned out what we wanted to do. We wanted to go do our own thing, go shopping, get some new clothes, that kind of stuff. Only when we got to school the next day, the teachers made it really clear we had to stick with the group. But since we were all stupid, rebellious 6th graders, we decided we just have to work around that. On the ride to New York, me, my friend Olivia, and my friend Devin decided we were going to leave the group and do whatever we wanted. Our class was pretty big, almost 60 of us, because they put 5, 6, and 7 together. So we thought if we weren't gone for too long, nobody would notice. We had brought money and we planned on buying tons of stuff, because even though we were a big class, we lived in a small town with only a couple of stores. Olivia loved shopping, and she had actually researched the area we were going to be around and picked out all the good stores. She even made us a little map. She was good at that kind of stuff. When we got to New York, Devin chickened out because his parents were pretty strict and he didn't want to get his phone taken away again. Olivia and I decided that he could just give us his money and we buy his stuff for him. So he did just that, and after they herded everybody off the bus, we kind of lingered back. We were right about them being distracted by everyone else because we got away with no problem. Olivia's map worked out pretty good too, and we were gone probably 10 or 20 minutes before stuff started getting really scary. We had just left this store, and Olivia was carrying her shopping bags when this guy noticed us. It probably wasn't hard to pick us out. 2 little 6th graders walking around alone, carrying a ton of clothes. He started calling out to us, saying how he could buy us more clothes, all the jewelry we wanted, if we just came with him. We didn't believe him, of course. We just kept walking, heading on to the next store. Only this guy wouldn't stop talking. He started following us now, and getting kind of pissed that we wouldn't answer him. I told him to screw off because I thought that he would take a hint. There was tons of people around, and we figured he couldn't really kidnap us in front of 200 people. But he kept following us, and he started getting a lot closer. He had probably been about 30 or 40 yards back, where we could barely see him over the other people, but now he was only 15 or 20 feet. That's when we started panicking, because there was some crazy man after us and we had no idea where the group was. We decided to split off from the sidewalk and head down into some alley, because we figured people would call out the guy if he started to follow us. But of course, it was New York, and everybody else was too wrapped up in their own little problems. So now we're walking down this dark alley, and this guy is still after us. He fell a little back, probably back to about 30 feet now, but now he's not pretending to be a good guy. He's talking about how he's gonna kill us, and how they'll never find our bodies, and how much fun he's gonna have with us. And he's smiling this deranged grin the whole time. We're both on the verge of tears now, because we figured this sociopath is about to kill us. Olivia just decides to drop her stuff and yells, "Run!" So we both started running, and we're probably around halfway through this alley, but then she turns around and she screams. So I turn around and I see this psychopath is running after us now too, and he has a knife. We're both screaming now, and I'm running faster than I ever have before, and we just run out of the alley back into this crowd of people. And as we try to get into this group of people to make sure this guy can't stab us to death, I turn around and he's just standing back in the alley, smiling. I turn back around and this random lady is asking us what's wrong, because we're both sobbing and Olivia's dress is ripped, and I'm bleeding because my arm scraped the wall, and we're crying so hard we can't talk. As soon as we can actually manage to talk, we tell her our school, and she looks it up and calls them, and we somehow manage to find our group again. We're both forced to stay right next to the teachers because they don't trust us anymore, and I honestly don't blame them. We didn't even tell them about the man. And as soon as I get home, I'm grounded and my phone is taken away, but still, nobody but me and Olivia knows about that man. School ended a couple of days later and I got my phone back. So I texted Olivia and she sent me a picture of our class in front of some important building and told me to look in the bottom left corner. To my surprise, that man was in the picture, mostly hidden behind some wall, but you can still see his face, smiling that deranged grin for the camera. We never really talked about the man again. I didn't want to bring it up and Olivia didn't either. I'm terrified of cities now though. I like to stick to a couple of towns near me and that's it, because there's a lower chance of getting stabbed to death.